Hello, everybody, and welcome to UFO Secret Space. And I'm your host, Janet Lessin. I have co-host Deborah DeFranco. She might be joining us soon. She sometimes gets lost in her garden. It's that time of year. And Karen Gresham-Nichols. I have two Karens. Karen Gresham-Nichols was having a little bit of a emergency, but she's going to come join us probably in the second half of the show if we are on that long. But today our special guest is Susan Vaughn, and I'm pronouncing it Seggern, but you'll have to correct me when you get on here.
That's right.
And she's
Seggern.
one of the
Susan Vaughn Seggern.
That's right. Okay. Excellent. She's one of the most well-known and well-liked publicists in Los Angeles. She's been in LA for more than 20 years. Her work as a major label publicist, CEO of a boutique PR agency, and her time spent in political PR, her globe-trotting exploits in corporate PR, and her return to consulting for events, corporate cause, and cultural clients have exposed countless journalists and their tastemakers to Susan's honest, positive, and tenacious PR style. And she has been honing her PR strategies, for over 2 decades. Anyway, I could sit here and read. I'm not reading very well because it's really tiny print. I'm going to just bring her on and have her tell us about her life and how she came to be who she is. And also we're going to talk about, let me pull this up, Premory. She's going to explain what that is, and time loops and other things like an event she had at Contact in the Desert that was witnessed by 100 people. Okay, so welcome, Susan. Thanks for coming on today.
Oh, well, Janet, thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. I'm really excited. This is really the first time that I've ever come out publicly to talk about my experience with Premory or pre-membering or time loops and my experiences with those. So I'm kind of like coming out, and I'm very excited.
Me too.
To tell your audience a little bit about me, I have been doing PR. Actually, it's just about 30 years professionally now, almost. And I started in the early 90s in New York. I worked at a really groovy hip hop and indie rock PR firm. And then I moved out here with that firm, and actually that was one of my earliest Premories was knowing exactly how I was going to move to Los Angeles, but years before a year and a half or more before I did, and the way I remembered how that happened was like exactly the way I pre-membered how it happened was exactly how it happened. It was really freaky at the time. But anyway, I'll tell that more, but I moved out to LA. And after I was here for not that long, I got recruited to be the head of West Coast PR for Island Records, which was super cool in the mid-90s. And I did that for about 4 years. And then I had a cup of coffee at Priority Records, which was a big hip-hop label. During that time, I had been getting really involved in the electronic music scene, the rave scene. And I left Priority and started a electronic music and digital culture PR company, which was called Green Galactic.
Wow.
We attracted all kinds of crazy clients, as you can imagine with that name. And I did that for 6 years before segueing into political PR. I worked for the Democrats in the lead up to the 2004 election. After the election, I was just, a basket case, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I got recruited to be the head of global media relations for one of the world's largest online gambling companies. And there's also a Premory story related to that.
Wow.
I did that for a little over 3 years, and then that ended when the federales kind of cracked down on online gambling in America, and I was their only American employee, so they had to let me go, which was fine because I had done 3 years of traveling 100,000 miles a year, and I was really done with that. And I ended up, I was right around the time I was getting married, so I ended up being my own wedding planner and getting married, and then I segued to consulting, and I've just been doing consulting for the last 12 years, since August of 2008, and I do a lot of spiritual work. I've been doing the PR for all the Bhakti Fest events for the last 8 years. you and I know each other from the work I've done with the Contact in the Desert event. I do the PR for Disclosure Fest. People think of me as this sort of like, you know, music, spirituality, PR person, but my really dirty secret is that I'm actually a corporate publicist. And that I do tons of tech and real estate and apps and just, you know, a lot of green sustainability stuff too. So I've had a lot of amazing experiences in PR. And now I'm also, you know, I'm married and I have a 7-year-old who's going to be turning 8 in a couple months. And so I have just like, you know, a regular normal PR life. But over this whole time, I've had this weird experience of remembering things from the future. I say remembering things from the future because that's how it feels. Like, you know how when you remember something, it's like a passing thought, or you just sort of remember it a little bit, and you're like, oh, that thing that happened. That's kind of how I experience remembering things from the future, Premory.
Oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. So there's a couple directions we can go. First, I want to go back, and so you do PR. So, like, what types of clients are you working with right now? You're doing the Bhakti Fest. Now, is the Bhakti Fest still at the – what are they doing now in COVID times with all these festivals? Well,
they're actually doing an online event this weekend that I'm not that involved in because I think it's a little lower budget than, you know, usual. I was working on Shakti Fest this year, but then of course that got canceled. Contact in the Desert got canceled. Disclosure Fest got canceled. So all my events kind of evaporated. And but luckily, you know, the universe, I guess, wants to give me business. So I do have like 6 clients right now. I've been working with Jayu Tal for a couple of years, the kirtan artist. He's a saint. He is like an actual saint. Like the way Yogananda talks about living saints, Jayu Tal is one of those people. Just amazing.
I've seen him perform, but I can't remember where and when. I think it was here in Maui at one time,
probably.
And then somewhere else. But I traveled so much the last 25 years, it could have been anywhere. So, but that's wonderful. Right. And I'm going to have Jai on in a couple weeks. I forget what day. I don't have it in front of me.
I think Tuesday. I think next Tuesday.
Tuesday, yes. I think it was coming up pretty soon. So, so somebody wants to be your client. And how many do you have? Do you have a limit of how many you work with at a time, or? How would they contact you to your clients?
I try to keep it down to 5. You know, sometimes, you know, there'll be 1 or 2 overhanging from the month before or whatever. I need to finish those up. But it's usually like 5 or 6. And then if it gets to be more than that, I have a contractor that I work with who I love and is amazing. And she also, her name is Bonnie Burkert, and she has a company called Magician Media, and she does social media. And she also has worked with me on Bhakti Fest and Contact in the Desert. And so if I get more busy than I can handle, I bring her in to also do PR. So, so right now, my other clients besides Jai, I have 3 music clients, all kind of spiritual music clients. One is Adam Bauer, who is Christian Das's bass player. One is an awesome singer named Cassandra Kubinski out of New York. And one is a really super groovy kind of spiritual artist out of the Bay Area named Ananta Govinda. So I'll be hitting you up to get them on your show.
Okay, cool.
And then
you mentioned
I have
Okay, go ahead. You finish, and then I'll ask you a question. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then I have a really great Icelandic wind power company for home installed wind, which I think is definitely something that especially people in Hawaii could really use. They're called Icewind. And then I have a kind of a CRM company. If it's an app, it turns your contact list in your phone into this amazingly simple CRM. They're called Contact Mapping. And you actually had Tom Cheneau from Contact Mapping on, and I'm trying to get Adrian from there on with you too. So so that's what's keeping me busy right now.
Busy person. Now, you mentioned Disclosure Fest. I haven't heard about that. What was that about, and did they have any events, or are they coming up? Or
They didn't have an event. They were talking about doing an online event. I don't know if that's happening, but basically for the last, not this year, but the 3 previous years, Disclosure Fest is an event that takes place at the Los Angeles Historic Park, which is the new Los Angeles State Historic Park. It's the new state park in Los Angeles, just north of downtown. It's kind of like next to Chinatown. And it's an all-day event with yoga and music and speakers and DJs and, you know, cooking demonstrations. It's kind of like a mini, it's kind of like a free mini lightning in a bottle in town. One day free lightning in a bottle in town. So it's really, I mean, it went, I think the first year we had 5,000 and the second year we had 10,000 and then last year we had 20,000. And this year I think we were expecting like 30, 40,000, but then, you know, everything happened. So.
Right.
No, yeah.
So what do they mean by disclosure? When I think of disclosure, I think of the UFO movement and, you know, the government coming out that we've been on
They do have
Mars.
quite a few. They do have a lot of speakers in that field, and one of their hosts the last 2 years has been Jimmy Church, and so they do a lot of. There's a lot of disclosure content in the event, although it is not strictly a disclosure event. It's more of a everybody come together with their groovy, spiritual, extraterrestrial, yogic, musical vibes. And it really works. It's really a fun event. And what I really like about it is because it's in downtown Los Angeles and it's free. It's a very multicultural event. It, you know, like for all your things like out in Joshua Tree, it's expensive to get there. It's expensive to stay there. It's expensive to pay the ticket. So those tend to be very, like, homogeneous, upper middle class white people crowds, and Disclosure Fest is everybody, and it's really nice to see that, you know, everybody is into these topics too. So it's a beautiful event.
That's great. I had never heard about that one. So it's free. That's an interesting concept. So how do they make their money? Or are they even into money? Or is it just by having booths? Do they charge for booths?
Yeah, sponsorships and vendor sales. Yeah, booth sales.
Wow, sounds great. We should have one over in Maui.
Yeah, we would go great, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a very eclectic culture here, so it sounds like it would fit right in. So, wow. So let's go. Anything else you want to say about your work? Because that's fascinating. I like to hear what people do. So you've been doing this for a long time, like.
Yeah, I've been doing it for almost 30 years. It's just been a great career. I mean, I like to write and I like to talk and I'm very organized and I like to throw events. And, you know, I started doing PR. I had this internship in college and I just was like instantly great at it. And it was like, oh, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. So that's what I do.
Well, if I ever do, I did an event called Stargates to the Cosmos in Albuquerque in October 2018. And I was exhausted. So if I ever pick it up again, you know, the world picks up again, we can travel again, I will talk to you about, because I was, you know, I'm older than you, and I just got exhausted. But I liked doing it. It was, I didn't make any money. It wasn't about money, but I didn't really have any help, you know. And I got there, and it was like everybody was partying and having fun, which I was happy for them. But I was, you know, getting about 3 hours sleep. I was just like,
I mean, I really respect the event producers that I work with, because what they do, I could never do.
Yeah, well, I didn't think I could either, but I did it because I've been a part of events all my life. I mean, I started with Star Trek in the early 70s.
Oh, wow.
I was a teenager to the early 20s, and you know, we had I went to 2 in New York City, and I helped organize them, and I did what I could to work helping them. We had 20,000 at the one event. I don't know what the numbers were. It was about the same on both of them, and it was just amazing to go, and everybody's united around one vision, you know, one theme, and everybody gets like high. There's no drugs needed. You just like get stoned on existence.
Right.
Right. co-creating. We had the vision of the future. It wasn't the ufologists, that wasn't real big, but we were imagining this timeline where everybody would have their needs met and we'd be traveling in space and united with extraterrestrials. So I've been in that for 50 years.
Well, what's interesting that you bring that up, because in the Star Trek cosmology, the thing that the Starfleet and the society, they actually look back at the early 21st century as this time, this really terrible dark time in humanity's history that we had to move through to get to the life and the what do they call it, fully automated luxury communism of the Star Trek universe. So it is sort of a funny thing to think that, like, Gene Roddenberry and his compatriots were kind of looking ahead to the early 21st century and knew that it would get worse before it got better. And I'm hoping we're in the darkness before the dawn right now, but I guess we'll see. We're going to be in this mess until we decide we don't want to be in this mess anymore. And I think a lot of the entrenched powers that be, don't want us to get to the other side of it, because the other side of it is heavier on the communism part of the fully automated luxury communism. And I think that's really scary to the patriarchy. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but we're in it now.
I'm taken aback by your terminology, but I love it. So you're calling the Star Trekian future a fully automated, slow that down, I'm going to write it down, fully automated technological communism. Luxury.
I did not come up with that. I don't know who came up with that. That is not a term that I came up with, but it is a term that you use when you're looking at those kind of like future, science fiction things where, we've gotten to the point where we realize there's enough for everybody, and we've got the technology to distribute it, equitably and fairly, and we want everybody, rising tide lifts all boats. We want people to have that equity and that fairness, and I think, like I said, we're gonna be in this mess until we decide that we want to get past this mess, and I really do think that we have the computing power, and we have the technology, and we have the intelligence to do it. It's just going to be whether or not the patriarchy can let go. And it might be ugly before it's not ugly. It is ugly right now, but it might be more ugly and then get better. We'll see. We don't know. We'll see.
There's always good and bad in everything, so it's pretty ugly.
True.
It's giving people the opportunity to spend time with their children that they didn't before.
Yeah.
Because everybody had their heads buried in a cell phone, right? So,
right.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying my hermit phase, where to me it was getting to be like, oh, I got to go into town, fight all the masses of humanity. It's like, oh, cool.
Right.
I'm not as much into consumerism. It's like, oh, I don't really need that stuff. So I'm getting more into what's the priority, and then because every day you could die, right? I hear these stories. Got COVID, you're dead in 2 days. It's like, what? Those people take a long time. Some people will have eternal COVID. They call them the long haulers, and they're sick for 6 months or 4 months, and they're gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad disease. It can leave you with all kinds of neurological and heart and all kinds of bad things after you basically get better. It still has some bad effects. I mean, we're still learning about it. We don't really know. The scientists, are doing amazing things, but they're still figuring out exactly what this thing is. I mean, that's why it's the novel coronavirus, because it's new.
Right. But it's new. I would love if we were more technologically advanced, like in the Star Trekian universe, where, they could figure it out in like a couple days, right? Okay, we've got the cure. But we're here, and we don't seem to have much progress on, like, does it affect A blood or O blood? I mean, there's some basic things you would think you would be able to figure out and categorize. So I'm excited about moving past. We're like a level 0 civilization in the Kardashev scale.
Right.
So I'm embracing the fully automated luxury communistic future, although people are so down on the term communism.
I
There's
know.
a lot of name calling. You're a communist. You're a socialist. You're a Democrat. So.
Right.
Yes, go ahead. What were you going to say about that?
No, I agree with you. I mean, although I feel like as a lifelong, leftist, progressive, some would say communist.
Yeah, me too.
I like to embrace it. Like I'm a progressive, and I am not ashamed of it. And if progressivism is wanting like a fair and equitable society where everybody can live up to their full potential, then sign me up.
Bring it on. That sounds good to me. So what is that we're on some level we're allowing people to shame us out of something that's really a good thing. And
right.
I look at that. Yeah. It's like some kind of programming. It's like, what? You're going to shame me because I want everybody to have food and clothes and
right.
And they all, just for being
healthcare
alive,
and education.
They deserve to have a healthcare, education, a roof over your head. I mean,
right.
What's wrong with that? Oh,
exactly.
they're lazy. That's the thing. They go, oh, they're lazy. They're lazy. So like a shame-based society.
Well, I mean,
not. Yeah, go ahead. Your turn.
I'm a lifelong progressive, but I'm also, just by accident of my incarnation, I'm also a lifelong upper middle class white person. And I mean, and I know plenty of lazy upper middle class white people, and honestly, like the poor people I know are a lot harder working and a lot more ambitious in making it happen. And the people who I grew up with and around, there's a lot of just it's easy to, you go work for your dad's company, or you post into school as a legacy, or you know what I mean? I think this idea that poor people are lazy is just a bunch of baloney. I think, I don't think laziness is a personality trait. I don't think what your economic situation actually defines that.
I think people, when they find something interesting to do, they do it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call them necessarily lazy, although some of them, over here, some major in going to the beach. But I had a friend, and she had 2 young teenage boy and a girl, and they turned surfing into earning a living, and they were doing championships and traveling all over the world. So somebody could say, well, that's lazy, but they were encouraged to find something they like to do, and that's how they earn a living in life, rather than you got to go work at McDonald's or Walmart or something.
And being a world-class athlete in anything is, that you can't be lazy and be a world-class athlete. You know what I mean? There's all the planning and moving and traveling and working on your sport. I mean, that, to be a any kind of competitive athlete, there's no laziness allowed.
Nope. They just figured it out, how to do what you love and get paid. And I think that's what it's about. It's a career, or doing what you love to do anyway and getting paid. And then, like in Star Trek universe, they move past money. And, I actually lived on a military base out in the Pacific called Johnson Atoll. And we earned money, but it just went in the bank because you didn't need any money. It was like being on a ship out in space, right? You didn't need any money. Everything was there. You got all your food. You got your housing. Then when you retired, you might come home with $500,000 or $1 million in the bank that you had earned from not having to spend it for 5 years being there. So there's other ways of doing things. That's why I've always been a progressive, and I started out with Star Trek, and I knew all the original people, Roddenberry and all them. They were living, and I was receiving their visions. They were speaking in front of Roddenberry was absolutely amazing. Oh, his vision for this future, which he manifested in this television show, which is still with us,
amazing.
It's, all on CBS, and it's like, what a visionary. So that brings us to Premories or Prememories, or tell us about those things. How did How did they come about, and how did you manifest them? Because I manifest things too, but you might operate differently than I do. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting that manifesting and Premory are certainly related. So when I'm an only child, and I'm one of the, and I grew up, no brothers and sisters. It was, in the 70s. My parents were not super involved with like hanging out with me or playing with me or whatever. It was just like, that just wasn't done then. You know what I mean? It's no diss on them, but it was different. Parenting was different then. And so I had a lot of free time, and I'm one of those people who has, what I guess you would call a rich inner life. Like, I've always kind of talked to myself, and I've always kind of, had like, big daydreams where I would, kind of scenario plan like how my future was going to be. And I've always been like that my whole life. So my first experience of Premory was where I really noticed it was after I graduated from college. I'd been kind of doing like, part-time jobs that summer and what have you. And then I went to a party with a girlfriend of mine and met this PR company that she had worked with, and met the owner of the PR company. And the owner of the PR company was like, call me and we'll get you on a project, and then maybe we'll hire you. So, and I really wanted to work at this company. They were super cool. They had all these great hip hop artists and they worked with The Cure. I was just like, I have to work at this company. So I called this woman, every day for like 2 months to try to get her to hire me. And her assistant, like by the end of the time, he was like, she really is impressed that you called every day. So we're going to bring you on for this project. So they ended up bringing me on for this project that I did and was very successful at. And I was working in their office doing it. And then they were like, all right, we want to hire you. And this was like in December of 1990, they hired me. And I had always gone to Florida to visit my grandmother over Christmas break. And so I had this plan to go to Florida over Christmas break. And my grandmother lived right on the beach. And my favorite thing to do when I was visiting was to just walk up and down the beach and kind of just be in my own head and think and dream and what have you. And so while I was doing that walking on the beach that week, I had this very completely realized vision of how I was going to move to Los Angeles. And I was going to move to Los Angeles by keeping this job, and I was going to get a boyfriend, and he was going to be wanting to move to Los Angeles. And then the woman who ran the office for this company in Los Angeles, and I think they had just hired her right around the same time they hired me. She was going to turn out to be a little on the iffy side, and they were going to need someone to go out there, and then I was going to go to Los Angeles with my boyfriend who was going to go to film school. I didn't have the boyfriend. I barely had the job. The LA office had barely opened. Like, there was no way I could, but this was just my fantasy of what was going to happen. And then a year and a half later, it happened. The only part that didn't happen was the boyfriend ended up not coming because the boyfriend ended up he graduated from Harvard, and then he didn't get into film school. But then he got into film school later and came out later, but he didn't come out with me. So anyway, it was like, so after it happened exactly the way that I had visualized it happening, I was like, that's crazy, but, great. I'm in LA, I have this cool job, wonderful. So after about 6 months in LA, I got recruited by Island, and then when I was at Island, I started getting this other idea that after Island, whenever that was, I was going to start my own PR company. And it was going to be in the same building that the LA office of the PR company that I worked at was in. And it was going to be a multifaceted PR company. It wasn't just going to be music. It was going to be music and television and film and tech and other things because I like lots of things. And in my vision of this PR company in the office, next to the front door of the office about kind of almost next to the door, but almost kind of to the top of the door, there was this green light, like a neon light or something. And so, after I had this vision, I didn't think that much of it. But then after I left Island, and then I was a priority for a minute, and then we started the agency it was in the Taft Building, which was the building on the corner of Hollywood and Vine, the southwest corner of Hollywood and Vine. It's still there. It was one of the original buildings built in Hollywood. It was built by Taft, who is Taft Boulevard in the Valley here, and he was He was one of the original builders of Central Hollywood, and he actually built the development that is the original Hollywood tract, which I actually live in a house that he built, a 1916 craftsman that we live in Hollywood. And also, if we're going into Susan's crazy cosmology, he was a member of the Hollywood Mason Society, who also, William Mulholland was a Hollywood Mason. He built, Mulholland Drive, and he built the Hollywood Reservoir. And, if you've seen Chinatown, you kind of know about William Mulholland. Griffith J. Griffith was a Hollywood Mason. He built, Griffith Park. He built Griffith Observatory. Griffith Observatory has a Foucault's pendulum in the lobby. Like, he's not like, they weren't trying to even pretend like it wasn't the case. And then there's this really amazing mural above that by a guy named Hugo Ballin, who was also a member of the Hollywood Masons, and it's a very symbolic, kind of weird mural.
Was your family in the Masons when you were growing up?
No, I'm Jewish. My married name is von Seggern, so no. But Hollywood, there's a lot of Mason-y things around Hollywood. The five-pointed stars up and down the street. And the Hollywood Mason Lodge is actually the building that they now film the Jimmy Kimmel show in. And the Hollywood Bowl was also designed by somebody who's was in the Hollywood Masons, and that is certainly an energy, kind of focuser, the way the bowl is, and also the Hollywood land development and the Hollywood sign, and you've got to figure everybody on the planet knows about the Hollywood sign, and there's so much energy that goes towards the Hollywood sign from all over the world all the time.
Great.
So I mean, I do kind of feel like that there is some very important like ley lines and stuff in Hollywood that the Hollywood Masons were focusing on, and so the fact that I live here has, I think, I feel like I've been influenced by that energy anyway. So I was in the Taft Building. So I have this office for this company that I envisioned. So I have two business partners. The guy business partner walks in one day, and he's like, "Oh, I found this in my dad's garage, and I think it would be so perfect for our company, Green Galactic. Why don't we put it here?" And he hangs it up on the wall next to the door, and it's this clock, time loops, Premory. It's a clock that has like a green neon thing in it. And I mean, my chin hit the floor. I was like, huh, how about that? Like, that was just, and so then I really started to pay attention. I was like, okay, this is weird. This is like two big things that have happened that I visualized very deeply, very clearly, that manifested exactly the way I had envisioned them. And but like I didn't buy the green neon light. The green neon light just like appeared. So it was super weird. So I was like, okay, this is weird. So at the time when I first moved to LA, I was living not too far from where I am now in a building called the Princess Grace Apartments that were within walking distance from the Taft Building because I didn't have a car. I eventually got a car. So one of the things that I would do, because also I was in my 20s and I was in the music business and I was partying and drinking, and so often on Sundays Oh, it was great. So often on Sundays, I didn't want to like take a big hike or whatever, but I wanted to kind of like walk off my hangover, basically. And I discovered the Hollywood Reservoir, which is there from William Mulholland. And when you walk around the Hollywood Reservoir, you circumambulate the Hollywood Reservoir, and then part of that walk is actually on the Hollywood Dam, which is they just built a dam across a canyon and they filled it with water, and that's the Hollywood Reservoir. So it has all this masony stuff around it from Mulholland, but then it's also just like the energy of a dam holding a lot of water, which is a lot of pent-up energy. It's, billions of gallons of water that, could come if the dam breaks, like could come down and flood Hollywood. So it's a lot of energy being held back by the dam. And what I noticed is that I would have like, it's walking near water and also walking near water while hungover. That kind of would allow me to have these visions. Because the one about getting the office there also kind of came from walking around the reservoir. So I had two other very clear experiences walking around the reservoir and then things happening exactly like I envisioned. So in the mid-'90s, and I'm friends with like a lot of kind of big New Thought thinkers like Doug Rushkoff and Mark Pesce and Richard Metzger and Eric Davis, and like these guys are my friends. And so in the 90s, Richard Metzger, who did the website Disinfo, and now he has a great blog. Dangerous Minds is his amazing blog. Anyway, so Richard and I had gone to see Terence McKenna speak at, he was speaking at the Paramount Ranch in the Malibu Hills. And so soon after that, he was great. Oh my God, it was amazing. And so soon after that, I was walking around the reservoir, and I had this vision of that I was going to go to Hawaii with a boyfriend, and at the time I didn't have a boyfriend, or it was a different boyfriend than the boyfriend I had at the time, I think. With my boyfriend and I were going to go to Hawaii, and we were going to hang out with Terence. And I had a pretty clear vision of Terence's house and the property around there, and then like a couple years later, because I think this was probably like in '97. And then in 99, I did end up going to Esalen, and Mark was speaking there with Terence. And so I met Terence, and then I met a guy who then did become my boyfriend. And then over Christmas, this was like in August when we saw Terence at Esalen, and then over Christmas, we went to Hawaii and hung out with Terence on the Big Island.
Oh, that's cool. I've got a Terence story too.
Yeah. I mean, he was great. I mean, we had a lot of fun. I didn't do ayahuasca that week, but we definitely had a fun time, and it was amazing. But it was just like, 2 years later, it was so weird.
Right.
And then similar, walking around the reservoir, hungover. This was probably in 2000. I don't know. I was doing the PR for Earth Dance, and the Earth Dance people had done an India trip, and I didn't go on it, but I really wanted to. And so I was walking around the reservoir, and I was thinking, like, I want to go to India. I'm going to go to India. I'm going to go on this trip like they did, and I'm going to go to Delhi and Agra and the place where the Sikh temple is, the Golden Temple. I can't think of the name of that place right now. And Dharamsala. And I was like, I'm going to do that. That's my thing. And so I decided, I guess this was actually, it was a little closer timeline to when it kind of happened. So I was like, I'm going to go to India. That's what I'm going to do on my vacation. This was 2000. And I'm doing this. And so I went to my parents in the desert. They live in Palm Desert. And I was like, Mom, for my vacation this year, I'm going to go to India. And my mother was like, who are you going to go with? I was like, I'm just going to go. She's like, you're not going to India by yourself. And I was like, I was 32 at the time.
Yeah,
and
I
was 31 or 32 at the time, but I was like, I guess I'm not going to go to India. Sad.
Aww.
So that was like, I usually go to my parents like a Saturday. I drive out there and I have dinner with them Saturday night, and Sunday morning go to the pool or whatever, and then Sunday afternoon drive back. So Monday morning, I was driving to work, and I was like, God damn it, I'm 32 years old. I want to go to India. I should just go. I was like, I'm going to call my mother, and I'm going to tell her I'm going. And she can't tell me I'm not going because, screw her. Anyway, so I get into my office. I'm getting into my email in the morning, and I have an email from a friend of mine, Zach, who part of this Jewish meditation center in Berkeley, and he is putting together an India trip. And that India trip goes from Delhi to Agra to where the Golden Temple is to Dharamsala.
Wow.
And I'm like, I guess that's my trip. So I call my mom, and I'm like, hey, Mom, can I go to India with the Jewish group? And she was like, of course you can.
Wow.
So after that, I was really, those were like the big 4 Premory experiences I had in my life that were these very clear things. And they also happened because I was walking, I feel like because I was walking near powerful bodies of water, hungover. I think when you're a little hungover, I think your brain is open in a different way.
Right.
And actually, in Eric Wargo's Time Loops book, he talks about, the sort of the king of time loop experiences was the author Philip K. Dick, and he
I heard Philip K. Dick in my head earlier in this conversation. I didn't know when it was going to come up, but I knew you were going to say it somewhere.
There you go. There's a time
I don't know
loop
why.
Yeah, that's why, because you remembered it from the future. So anyway, so Philip K. Dick, a lot of people have written a lot about Philip K. Dick, and one of the things they say is that his sort of psychicness and his future prediction stuff would come out much stronger when he was more screwed up on drugs or more, drunk or hungover or whatever.
Because it opens portals. Psychedelic.
Yeah, it's not healthy, but it opens portals.
Well, it opens portals, right? Well, Terrence was a friend of my husband's, and so Terrence has been at our house here in Maui, and they would go back and forth and hang out together. So when I arrived in Maui in 1997, one of the earliest things was Terrence, I forget exactly what it was, but Terrence was here going to do like a dance rave type thing down at the local, and he knew he was dying of the brain tumor. So he said, this is probably the last time we get to see him. So then he died April 3rd, 2000. So anyway, so I got to see him, and I was at this rave, and I wasn't doing anything because I came from this non-drug culture. But, I'm always open-minded, so I understood about psychedelics. But my girlfriend went with a female friend. I wasn't a great relationship. And so she had taken some ecstasy. So I was watching. And just being in the room, even though I didn't take anything, I was like the designated driver. You get like a contact high. Everybody's raving on this, and Terrence is up there talking about the future. How he does his rap, and it's just I got it. I felt the energy, and I'm very, very sensitive that way. So that was my Terrence story, but he knew Sasha, and so there's a long history of those two knowing each other. And he didn't say, hey, I knew Terrence. It emerged over time. I finally got the story of that connection. Now I want to go back a little bit earlier in your tale. So my grandfather was a Mason, and he had something to do, and this is over in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, something to do with founding the Pittsburgh Masons. But when he died in 1978, at the funeral, there was a Jewish fellow. And I said, what's, because we're all Gentiles. I go, what's going on? I don't know this person. And they said, oh, he was grateful to, Grandpa because he got, he opened up the Pittsburgh Masons and Jewish people were admitted. So that, and then when I came to visit with my sister-in-law who's in Rancho Palos Verdes, her name's Shelley Stockwell Nicholas, and she's a psychic, and she's head of the International Hypnosis Federation. She does hypnosis therapy. Anyway, her family, they were talking about being Masons. So I'm confused. So you're saying that Masons were not Jewish, but all sides of my husband's family, they're all Russian Jewish on both sides. So
maybe. I mean, I guess I wouldn't rule it out. I think of Masonry as being something that white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men are more into, and it actually is one of those things where I think when I was, because I went through all the usual stages of spiritual exploration as a youth and a grown up too. And in high school and junior high, I was like kind of a witch. And then like in high school, I started, I learned a little bit about Masonry. And I think I asked my mom, I was like, what's Masonry? And she's like, oh, that's not a Jewish thing. So, and then I just never pursued it from anything other than a intellectual standpoint. So that's funny. But the other thing my mother said to me, and this is sort of a, I feel like what it is that I feel like we all have this ability, and it's just a matter of how, like with anything, and it's just a matter of how tuned into it you are. Because another thing that I was fascinated with as a child, and then even later, was people who had a Vaughn in their last name. And my mother she'd been an editor at Condé Nast in the late 50s and the early 60s, and so we still were getting like W or Women's Wear Daily or something. And they had all the like sort of gossipy stuff about like Diane von Furstenberg. And Tatiana von Furstenberg is, I think, about the same age as me, and so they were like, and here's Tatiana von Furstenberg, Sweet 16 or whatever. And I remember saying to my mom, like, I want a Vaughn. Like, why can't I have a Vaughn in my name? And she was like, she looked at me, she was like, Jews do not get to have Vaughn. It's a very German thing, and Jews do not have Vaughns in their name. And I was kind of like, we'll see about that. And then when I started going out with my boyfriend, I was like, and my husband, I was like, oh, his name, let's get a Vaughn in his last name. And then when we got engaged, we'd been going out for like 3 years, and we got engaged, I was like, wait, I get that last name. Yes.
Oh, wow.
So now I'm Susan von Seggern, and then also what's interesting is when I was living in New York still and trying to work out my career stuff, even before I worked at the hip hop PR firm, I was kind of freelancing, and I made these business cards, and they had like an S and an O and an S on them, and that was like my SOS PR was like my little pretend PR company name. And now my business cards have my logo, which is like an S and a V and an S. So it was sort of like I knew that I was supposed to be an independent PR consultant, and I was going to have these cool cards with S's, 2 S's, which my maiden name was Mainzer, so it wouldn't have, had anything to do with that. And so it's sort of like there's things that a lot of it is very subconscious, but I think because I have, like I said, a rich inner life kind of thing, I think I'm maybe just a little more in touch with it than most people are. But I don't, it's like you thinking of the Philip K. Dick's name coming into your head earlier in the conversation. We all do it. A girlfriend of mine, was just in she got the most amazing situation right before all this happened. She got a gig house sitting in upstate New York for a couple from New Zealand. And she's always like the girl who like she's either like super wealthy or she's broke. And so she's like going through the phase of broke. And now she's got this like amazing house in upstate New York that she's going to be living in and cat sitting in indefinitely because these people are not coming back from New Zealand for a long time. Right. So anyway, she was at there's like a lot of state parks up there. So she was at a trailhead in the state park and she saw another girl go in just ahead of her. And then she had this thought of like, we're going to see a bear and me and that girl are going to come out together. And that is exactly what happened. And, you know, one of the things that Eric Wargo brings up in his Time Loops book is that often the experiences that people who experience time loops have will be like sort of a near-death experience because it's so visceral, like in your, you know, like you see a bear and you think, you know, oh my God, I'm going to die. This bear is going to get me. And so she managed to find that girl and they got out of the woods together and the bear didn't get them. So it's like, sometimes I think that is how it goes, you know, with the time loop stuff. And then, you know, also when I was reading Eric Wargo's Time Loops, which was last summer, it was blowing my mind, of course. And where was I? Oh, so while you know how when you read a book like that, like have you read Cosmic Trigger, Robert Anton Wilson's Cosmic Trigger?
No, but I met Robert Anton Wilson, but I didn't read his book. Yeah.
Right. Well, I highly recommend Cosmic Trigger. It's about synchronicities. So you'll be reading Cosmic Trigger, and then all of a sudden, like a million synchronicities start happening to you, and you're like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
Oh my
God. So reading Eric Wargo's Time Loops is kind of helps you get into that space of time loops. So last summer, I'm reading the book. I drove my son to camp. And then on my way driving back to my house from camp, I was listening to the radio and I was thinking, man, KCSN, which is kind of like our AAA Americana station in Los Angeles, they need to play more Traveling Wilburys. So then I go in the house and I'm working and I had a hair appointment for later that day. So then I'm driving in the car to my hair appointment and I have this like way that I push the buttons on the radio to listen to songs that I've been doing for millions of years. And I was doing that, but then I was like, let me just see what's on KSN. So I deviated from my usual pattern to see what was playing on KCSN. And then some song that I liked was on, and it was almost over. And then the next song was a Traveling Wilbury song. It's All Right. And
all right.
I was just like, okay, I'm in it now. And, you know, so it's definitely, you know, I definitely think it's real, and I definitely think it's something that people can work on and become more
right, you can develop it.
Yeah. And in fact, because I got so into it in the last year, then last fall I was working on PR for this incredible movie about meditation called The Portal. It was a documentary. And one of the experts in the documentary was Dr. Julia Mossberger, and she actually is an expert in Premory, and I'm looking up her name. Let's see.
I've never heard of the term Premory, but I'm glad you're introducing it to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dr. Julia Mossbridge, actually. And she is a fellow at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and she has a book that she's written called The Premonition Code, and that book sort of talks about the idea of premonitions and premory and premembering. And then she also has it's an online thing where you can kind of train yourself in it. And it's
right.
very much based around remote viewing, and she has a
I was
she has
just
a whole
going to say that.
yeah. So she has a whole yeah. See, you're gonna notice it all the time now. So she So I actually was doing. She has it's on her website, and you can sign up, and you can kind of work on this remote viewing thing. And I actually did work on it last, like over Christmas break a bunch, and like I'm not sure if it helped me or not, because my experience of remembering things from the future, it's not so like, it's not trying to guess what's behind, if I can predict what's behind the thing, you know what I mean? It's more like stuff that comes to me. So it's not very scientific in that way, but she actually has a whole scientifically based way of working on that is, very interesting, and she's a genius, and it's also just good to get different experts' sort of opinions about this field, which is kind of nascent. So yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. Yeah, because when I came to Honolulu in 1993, the remote viewers people, I didn't know who they were. They were working with SciWorld seminar. I was trying to find something spiritual to do, so I ended up in this seminar, and they were doing exercises on remote viewing. So it can be developed. I'm not much for formal training like that type of stuff, but I've always been very psychic like that, and I think that you can develop it. To me, it was always kind of like it was interesting, but I really didn't want to know too much that was going to happen, But you know what you know. So I was in a coma for 2 or 3 days before 911 hit, because somehow I knew what was coming down, and so I just went into this. And my other friend, she did the same thing, and then years later we're going, "What happened to you on 911?" She said, "I was in this coma right before 911 hit," and I go, "Me too." So I guess sensitive people, when they're feeling something, they go into reaction. What do you think? I think we got somebody joining us. Let's see.
No, that was my computer making the noise. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. We're having a nice conversation. If they can't come on, that's okay. I understand. Stuff happens. But anyway, what's going on now, it's really interesting to just explore it. What do you imagine is going to happen? Because we're coming up to an election. We've got all this stuff going on with death and dying. Just give me off the top of your head. So what do you think? What's happening? What's going to happen?
Well, obviously Trump is just going to try to, muddy everything as much as he can so that people don't know which way is up and try to steal the election. That's obviously what he's going to do. So everybody has to register to vote and get their absentee mail-in vote in weeks ahead, and we have to trounce him soundly so that Joe Biden can be president. And then I know the Biden campaign has legal teams in 50 states if they need to contest anything. That was sort of the problem with Gore in 2000. He didn't have that. And, I don't think – I think that Biden's team and the Democrats will really fight to, they won't go for some baloney like happened in that election. And then I think what needs to happen is Joe Biden needs to give everyone enough money to stay home and really shut the economy down, and you can't leave your house for a month. And then, get everybody who has the disease, get them well, and then we can really open up. I mean, that's what all the other civilized countries and some of the uncivilized countries did, and it's really working. We're the only major Western country that is having this problem, and it is because what is a public health crisis has been politicized, and it's really horrible and sad. And
Oh, yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of people are going to die unnecessarily.
I see that. You see that. Yeah, we're expecting to reach 300,000 before the end of the year. Death, not just sick, but death. And this is because it's been politicized. I actually did a show with James Tully about this Russian that had defected to the United States, and he introduced, let me get the name of this thing here. Oh, hold on. I've got to move off of your page to his page. And anyway, he said that this is intentional. It was started about 30 years ago under Reagan. It was to undermine the United States and lead us to Civil War II. And we would be just left totally devastated, our economy, everything. And then Russia would just walk right in.
Yeah,
and that's what the agenda's been. Go ahead.
It's so chaotic right now that I don't think anybody really can say what's going to happen.
Well, see, that was the purpose. You always bombard the media with 12 different perspectives of the same thing, and it's like babbling. Remember the biblical story of Babylon and Babel, Tower of Babel.
Right.
We've been babbled.
Right. Well, it's the classic fear, uncertainty, FUD, fear, uncertainty, division, I think, and you kind of sow that, and then that's what the Russian intelligence does. I mean, that's their stick for sure. The one thing that, if we don't have, a smooth transition of power and Biden comes in and shuts the economy and we get back on track, I mean, absolutely, I don't know if Russia's going to come in and take over, but could happen in America in the 2020s is what happened to Russia in the 90s, which is their economy collapsed. And with the economy collapse came, the dissolution of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Like, it was all one country when I was a kid. There was no,
bingo.
Georgia was a different country, and Tajikistan was a different country, and Turkmenistan was a different country, and Ukraine was a different country. It was all the USSR. And, I mean, certainly there is a part of me that thinks if Trump somehow stays in power or, steals the election or, whatever chicanery he gets up to, then I think we will possibly see the dissolution of the United States of America, and then it'll be like, the Republic of California or the, Ecotopia, as they would call the West Coast in the 70s.
I've seen the maps. That's the intention. Is the USSR is Russia's pissed off because it was the USSR, and we did it to them, and so that this is payback, and that's why definitely the Russians interfered with the 2016 election, because this is part of their agenda. It's called active measures, and they started with Reagan and Reaganomics and all that. So we've been outlining it on the show. And that's the agenda, and it's like, well, what do we do about it? Well, we have to raise consciousness and spirituality, but we're up against this agenda that's been in place for the last 30 years, and so what I'm seeing is that something happens. I don't know what, but something happens.
Something is always going to happen, but so that actually brings me to
go ahead.
Definitely. So that actually brings me to another potential worldview that I've been kind of working on for about the last maybe 6 months. So I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a lot of cultural items that have had things about, are we in a simulation? Is this a simulation? Do we live, what is the nature of time? Is the nature of time, we experience time as we're moving forward in time, but maybe, because if I can remember things in the future, maybe the future's already happened. Maybe it's all happened at once. Maybe we're in what Eric Wargo would call a glass box universe, and we just experience ourselves walking on our paths of our lives, but that's just how we experience it. Like fish experience water. They don't think there's anything else besides water. We don't think there's anything else besides linear time. So then the question is, and this comes up a lot in the people who are, saying, are we in a simulation or not, is there only one version of linear time, or are there multiple versions of linear time? And is there a timeline where Hillary Clinton is president and, 30 people died? And they're doing endless congressional, hearings about the 30 people that died from coronavirus with Hillary Clinton. And so anyway, there's been a lot of media lately that has had this question, Devs, which is on Hulu.
What is that called?
Devs, D-E-V-S, Devs. It's a show on Hulu, which is very specific about that. The last season of Westworld was very much about that. There's a show for kids called The Hollow that my husband and my son just happened to be watching on Netflix that's kind of about that. There's a show called The Loop on Amazon that's kind of about that. So there's a lot of stuff in the culture about
is that Tales from the Loop?
Tales from the Loop is an Amazon show. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, okay. I'm writing these down.
And there's another one on Amazon. There's another one on Amazon. Oh, it's about a Mexican girl and she's American, but she's lives in the Bay Area and she's Mexican. And she's going through a whole time loop thing with her dad and spirituality and ayahuasca, and I can't remember what that show's called. It's really good.
If you find that, let me know, because I'm trying to. I'm stuck at home, and I've gone through a lot of the good stuff, and I can't stand stuff that's just lame, right? It's like, oh God.
You'll definitely watch Devs. Devs is great, but the questions that a lot of these simulation shows pose is, and Devs was the best, I feel like, at posing this, was, is there one? Is there just one? Or is there, the most probable one, and that's the one we're in?
Let me tell you my insight on this. This will go into your contact in the desert experience. So when I was 4, I was out in my yard, and I get teleported onto a mothership, and they take me to a theater-like place, and they show me 24 potential timelines where I can experience life. They started out with the planet blows up into stardust, and the other end of the continuum was utopia, and there were 24 across the continuum, variations on the theme, from absolute devastation to all the variables in between. So they said, which one do you choose? So I didn't want to have perfection because there'd be nothing left to do, and I had the understanding of my eternal being. I wasn't a 4-year-old little girl. My total awareness of who I am in existence was there. So I said, well, give me the third one back from utopia, and that seems to be, to make an interesting reality. So that was in the summer of, in 1958. I was 4 years old. So then in 63, they was the 20-year anniversary of the Philadelphia experiment, and at Montauk they did an exercise, because every 20 years the biorhythms of the planet are in alignment. So in 63, they hijacked the timeline into the reality where we had Kennedy shot in the yada yada yada. So when I was a kid, I'm going, wait, this isn't the timeline I was on. What happened? So that's my understanding. Yes, it is a simulation, but we're co-creating it, and that's why we can change it. But we have to do things like these shows and wake people up to this level, because everybody thinks they're woke, but they're all in the conspiracy bullshit line. I'm sorry, it's a bunch of crap that keeps us fighting with each other and hating each other. And it's not, woke is not hate. If it ain't love, it's not. You're not awake. It's not truth. It's a lie. It's another.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's my 2 cents.
So
Back
another book that I've been reading recently that I think you would love and should read is actually The Simulation Hypothesis, which was written by Dr. Rizwan Virk, who is the head of the Play Lab at MIT, which is the kind of the video gaming laboratory there. But, you know, when you think of the incredible progress that's been made in video gaming since, you know, Pong to VR now, and that's about 45 years or so. So imagine where we go from, you know, from Minecraft and Second Life, you know, now, and, you know, Minecraft VR now to, you know, 45, 50 years in the future. It seems likely that, you know, incredibly lifelike simulations, especially once they get the quantum computers going, incredibly lifelike simulations are going to be very doable. So I do think that, you know, we are either in a simulation or we are the society that is creating the possibility to get to a simulation. And I do think
so
that
let's
maybe
look at
that. Yeah.
So are we in a simulation? What would be the indicators that we're in a simulation?
Well, the fact that we have a reality show president. Come on.
I mean, it does seem like there's a simulation there. Everything's it's all Orwellian doublespeak, and everything's the reverse. And so we've got, it's crazy. Sit down with a Republican for 2 hours, and you'll go, this is a simulation.
Oh my God! Well, they live in a totally different reality. Like their media and their reality based around their media is completely different. It's really sad. I mean, you know, we used to have, you know, sort of a consensus reality in America, and we don't have that anymore, and it's very unfortunate for a million.
So that was intentional. The shattering of our shared reality, our consensus reality. The shattering of that was a way of splitting us to destroy our. Eventually, I guess they destroy our country. Maybe they want to destroy our planet. I was having this conversation with my Republican brother, who's facing heart surgery. Right, so we're like, okay, how much longer do we have? We're now old. I'm in my middle to going on late 60s, and he's in his early going on middle 70s. It's like, okay, we're coming down the final stretch of this thing called life, and it just seems so bizarre when you're going through I mean, how old are you? Are you in your 40s now or something? And or how old are you?
I'm in my early 50s. Yeah.
Early 50s. Okay, so. You know, each phase is like, okay, now I'm in this reality, and you can remember, you know, your parents were in that, and now you're in it, and then my parents are dead, and it's like, okay, so we're going into these stations. Okay, now this is the time where anytime between now and X, I could drop over dead, I could wake up dead, or whatever, you know, and I've got an 80-year-old husband, and it's like, this is too bizarre. Is this real? Is any of this real? To me, it just seems.
I mean, the simulation hypothesis. What is really great about this book is that even though he is a scientist, he also is, you know, and he's American, but his parents were Indian immigrants, and he grew up as a Hindu, you know, spiritually. So he actually part of the book, and I really highly recommend the book, is that he talks about how Hinduism and Buddhism with reincarnation, they're kind of describing that we're in a simulation. Like we're here in this, you know, Earth temporal linear time reality, but, you know, in Hinduism and in Buddhism, there's this thing outside of this that we go to before birth and after death, you know, and then maybe we go around again, depending on how we did the last time, which is very video gamey and very, like, you know, like maybe this is some kind of like video game style simulation, and we, you know, they say like we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe we're the spiritual beings having the human experience, and the human experience is some kind of simulation. And then we go and, depending on what our score was, what our karma score was in our life, that determines if we have to play the game again and in what form we have to play the game again, or if we get to stop playing the game and stay in, the Pure Land Buddhists have like a very gorgeous vision of what that is, and so do the Vedas, and maybe that's what it is. I mean,
right.
But it definitely all sort of plays together and hangs together, and definitely experience UFO experiences. I mean, I've only had one, and it wasn't as major as yours. Definitely feel like they are outside of the regular reality. But if we're in a simulation, what the hell is regular reality anyway then? So, I mean, like my experience, I was part of the 100 and some odd people who saw UFOs at the 2016 Contact in the Desert. Were you there? Were you there in 2016? I
was at all of them except for last year because I was too sick to travel. And there was one early. I was at the first, second. There was one in the first. I just didn't have enough money to make it. So then I don't know how many have there been now. There's been.
It started in 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So last year was the 7th. So 13, 14, 15, 16. So the fourth one.
5 out of 7. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fourth one was in 2016. And I was hanging out at the George Norrie that year. The George Norrie party was a dinner in the sanctuary. And so I was hanging out there with my girlfriends. But then we were like, it was kind of over, and we were like, what should we do? And we were like, oh, let's go to the Overlook and see if we can, get on the goggles, the heat vision goggles. To the people look at the sky, and then they have the laser pointers to show where they're seeing the crafts. So we were just like in line with or hanging out there with like 100 people, and then the people with the goggles started to put their laser pointers on these. I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 spheres that were kind of just hanging in the sky, over the Overlook. It's hard to say how far away they were and how big they were because you don't know, how high up they were and how far away they were. Mm-hmm. But there was like these 4 spheres in the sky, small, not huge. They looked small, but hard to say. Don't know how far away they were. And then from the west, this like purple cloud kind of came in and was like in the middle of these 4 spheres, and then the whole thing just went whoosh and like went backwards, like went away and went up into the air, and then it was gone. So I saw that, and 2 of the girlfriends I was with saw it, and one of the girlfriends I was with didn't see it. So. But 100 other people there did see it, and some people got it on kind of shaky camera, video phone footage that's floating around the internet. If you Google Contact in the Desert sighting 2016, you'll find it. So, but it's just interesting to me that I saw it, and they have slightly different memories of it too. So it's funny that like I saw what I saw, they saw what they saw. One of my girlfriends didn't see anything. So I think there's some vibrational aspect to it that, if your mind is open or your heart is open or your energy is open, then you can experience that. And if it's not, it's not, So that was that was that experience. But it was very like, and I'm not. I mean, I'm a very spiritual person, but I'm also a believer in science. And I'm not going to say 100% that, you know, the experimental research group at the 29 Palms Air Force Base, I mean, they might have just been like, haha, the UFO conference is down the road. Let's go screw with them. You know what I mean? Like, it could have been that.
Yes.
It could have been them, or it could have been
It was something going on. I went to that. I forget which year was what, but they had that every year, and Lori and Fenton and her people were leading it the one year that I went. And so I would, when you get the goggles, I would just kind of like psychically look around, and then I'd go into where I thought they were hiding. I guess they're still, and then suddenly they'll start moving, and then you have the laser, and you go, 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and so you point to it. So I was doing that, and every time I would get to a place, and I just kind of scan the whole sky, and then I'd say, okay, they're there. I'd stay there. Then something would start booking across the sky, and I'd go here, here. And then, so that kept going on. Now, was I in some kind of telepathic communication? They're definitely not. Well, they're not a regular program. I want to say it's not a plane. It's like they're absolutely still. And suddenly they're shooting, and they're shooting up in the sky, and they're moving around, and so you can see them. But there is some kind of Air Force base there. I would see them coming from down below and going across really fast. Sometimes they would join. So it was definitely indicative that there was something beyond our reality that we're being told about what our space or our plane capabilities are. It was not; these are not planes. So, but I can't say conclusively what they were. Not planes.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly. These were definitely not planes. They were spheres, and then there was this weird cloud, and then they all just went whoosh, and then they were gone. It was one of the weirder. I mean, and I've obviously, from what I'm telling you, I've had plenty of weird experiences in my life. And that was definitely one of the weirdest ones for sure. That sighting was really crazy, but yeah. So that's and definitely Burke in the simulation hypothesis does say like, maybe UFOs are part of the simulation. Certain even Western spirituality, heaven and hell and, your soul incarnating and everything, like that's not too far away from the Hindu and Buddhist positions on reincarnation. And, so, I mean, it's one of those things, like, I guess we'll never really know, but, it does, there are these experiences and they are, unexplainable, and they come from somewhere.
So, yeah, we're just trying to figure it out. So I ordered that book while we were talking. I went over on Amazon.
Oh, great.
It'll be here in a few days, so maybe we can talk about it later.
He was supposed to speak at Contact in the Desert this year, but then Contact in the Desert got canceled with everything else. So that's actually how I became aware of him, was because Victoria was really like high on him and wanted me to get him, interviews and stuff. And then when I sort of was like looking into the book and having just gone through all this, time loop stuff, I was like, oh, this is very, 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 very interesting. So I'm definitely gonna, check him out.
I'll contact him if he comes on my show. I'll contact him if he comes on my show. You can come on too and ask him questions. Help me interview him. I love doing shows and doing these things. Is my play. We play with each other. Like, okay, how can we share and awaken humanity? Because everything's kind of shut down. But we're fortunate that we have the internet, and we have all these ways of playing with each other and awakening. I think we can do this, but we have to come together united in the force of love. If it's not love, don't do it, right? And keep correcting your course. It's like going down the highway. Oh, I'm going to one direction. Well, that's not love. Let's come back onto the love path. And so that was the conclusion we reached James totally, we identified the problem. We realized it's been going on. It's pretty heinous. It's, it's evil. It seems like we're careening down the mountain on a train, and we don't have any brakes or ways of changing. But the conclusion is we've come together spiritually, and that's what this whole show is about. We can manifest, we can create, we can future vision, or however you want to call it. The pre-memories.
Right. So that was always my question was, and especially like with The Secret, and you have to envision it so you can manifest it. And then my question was always like, am I manifesting it, or did it happen and I'm remembering it? And as my life has gone on and I've had these experiences, I tend to come down on the side of that it's happened, or there's just a set of possible things that can happen, and it's some subconscious way we sort of know what those things are. So the remembering from the future, are you remembering from the future? Are you manifesting? So, but maybe there is a selection like you had of options, and we always have to keep choosing the love option. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, I had a strange thing happen back in the late 90s. I was, I won't go into the personal part, but I was over on Oahu. I was all alone. Nobody was picking up the phone. You ever have that you're calling and nobody picks up the phone, and when they pick up the phone, they don't have time for you. And I was just devastated over a breakup. And I grabbed the pills, and I said, "Oh, I'll just kill myself. Nobody loves me anyway." I was in self-pity, and I woke up on the floor, and I don't remember anything between looking at the pills and waking up on the floor. Now, it seemed like I jumped timelines or something, and then years later, I was doing an exercise in therapy, and it was the soul retrieval, and I got really deep into a hypnotic type state, and I said, "Oh, there's that timeline, and I'm going to rejoin that timeline and correct it." It was like I was able to see the timeline that I was shown when I was 4. So, I it's like I had lost a piece of my soul in the devastation of that experience, where I felt so totally unloved and rejected that I wanted to kill myself. It was irrelevant whether I actually did it or not, because somehow I'm still alive in this timeline. At least I think I'm alive in this. I mean, I can't even prove I'm alive.
I'm pretty sure.
How do you prove that you're alive? I don't know. Apparently, people who die, they don't know they're dead, right? So maybe I'm dead. I've worked with ghosts, discarnate people, and my neighbor made a mistake, and he drove over this stream, and he had himself and 4 other people in the car, and 3 people died, including himself. And then my whole property was haunted, and they were coming to me, right? So he would sit on the foot of my bed, and he started to deteriorate like Beetlejuice, and I would go over. Apparently I have the ability to go out of my body at night, and I would go over and I'd sit with him, and I'd say, "What's going on?" And so we would do therapy. And I finally told my husband, I said, "I'm not getting any sleep because I'm getting out of my body, and I'm doing therapy with Jim," who's so distraught that he ended up killing him in this accident. He killed himself, and two young women, not young women, but 2 women who were at the height of their prime. So anyway, he eventually went on when his son, he kind of did suicide by motorcycle. He got drunk, driving 60. He was so distraught that his dad died. And then I saw that they found each other. This is like a therapy, and then everybody said, "Oh, Jim's gone," because people who knew Jim could feel him for years, like 2-3 years. Like, "What's going on with your property?" I go, "Yeah, we got a lot of ghosts around here." This is a very important portal, and I think when we went to contact in the desert, that was some kind of portal there, and it's a shame we're not at that location anymore.
Yeah, but that location was, I did so many events there because Bhakti and Shakti and Contact. I was there a lot for about 7 years. And that is a very special, important, wonderful place, the Joshua Tree Retreat Center and those buildings and everything. I mean, it's an amazing, heavy spot for sure. It is a shame that they're not still there. But so to your point though about places that have intensity. So going back to the Taft Building, which is the one on the corner of Hollywood and Vine, you know, a pretty, you know, one of the most famous intersections in the world. So that building, when it was built in the 1920s, Charlie Chaplin lived in the penthouse, even though it was an office building. It had it had a penthouse that Charlie Chaplin lived in, and the lore around that building was that Charlie Chaplin haunted the building, and the elevators in that building were just a total nightmare. They would drop. They would stop between floors and the doors would open. I mean, it was a nightmare. And then they went and they fixed the elevators and they put in all new elevators and they were like, we're getting the elevator situation. Because when I first was there when I first moved to LA and was working in that office for the PR company from New York, it had like the old style elevators where you pulled the door closed.
Yeah,
And it had like a little bench. And then later when I was working there, they took, again, when I had my agency, they took all those old elevators out and they put in modern new elevators. And then guess what happened once they got the modern new elevators in? Same problem.
They did the same thing, right? So it was something.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, I guess maybe this building is a little haunted. And I had one of the Premory times I had there, must have been in the late 90s also, I just could not get Eminem out of my head all day, and I was thinking about Eminem, and I was talking about Eminem, and I was hearing his songs, and I was like, God, you know, and we had like a whole conversation about Eminem at dinner, and then I had to go back to the office to get something after dinner, so it was like pretty late at night. And there was a lot of music business offices in that building. And so then who was in the elevator with me?
Eminem.
I was like, whoa, okay.
Well, I mean, got something going on there for sure.
He has super intense energy. And so I was feeling his intense energy, like leading up to the point of running into him. I was like, oh, your intense energy, it broadcasts back in time. Like, that's like the story with my friend with the bear. Like, the intensity of things can sometimes broadcast back in time. And that's certainly a point that Wargo and Moss Bridge and Burke all make, is that, you know, that intense thing broadcasts back.
When I was
and like
12,
your situation with 9/11.
Yeah. So when I was 12, the Monkees were coming to Pittsburgh, and I was 12, so my mother let me get tickets, right? And I'm getting so excited. It's like, I have to meet the Monkees. I have to meet the Monkees. So I kept, where are they going to pull in? I knew it was a Civic Arena. It's like, if you stand in the right place, my girlfriend had seen the Beatles the year before, and she stood at the right place, the right gate, right time, and she was able to ambush the car with all the other screaming teenagers. So I said, okay, I want to see the Monkees. So I got a pre-memory of exactly which gate to go to, where to stand. And so my favorite was Davy Jones. And I'm standing, I'm on the right side of the car. The car stops because there were people in front. Right in front of me, I take one step over to the car. I put my hand out. Davy puts his hand out from the other side. And we put our hand to hand. And I'm this 12-year-old little groupie. And it's like, heaven. So.
Yeah. You know, like you never know.
It told me. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Stuff just told you. It's incredible.
It's incredible when you do it. So I've been doing that all my life. And there's probably it becomes so natural, like it's like, oh yeah, it's another one of those, right? So, but there's got to be some way we can train ourselves to tap into that to create a better world for everybody. I mean, we're going to anchor into the future where we have the positive outcome. Because I was headed towards a Star Trekian future, right? I was totally anchored into that. Now, what happened? Maybe I needed these lessons of the last, 66 years of everything is perfect in some divine plan. And you needed everything you needed, and we all got everything we needed. But at some point, it's like, do we get the payoff? We've paid our dues. Do we get the payoff? And do we have to die to get this payoff? Or can we bring heaven to earth? Can we bring this spiritual realm into this manifestation of a reality where things are much brighter? There's still stuff to do to make it interesting, but it's not. This is so dark right now. It's just the dark before the dawn. Yeah, it's just the dark.
I'm hoping.
I mean, I wake up.
I'm really hoping.
Oh, yeah. I wake up and go, oh no, are we still in the COVID world? It just seems like a bad science fiction movie. I mean, how many times have we done this in science fiction movies? We've been talking about, this apocalyptic ending.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, I don't know. I mean, Americans especially don't want to, have never really had anything bad happen to them. We've never had a war on this, on this continent. We've never had a disease situation like this. Like, we've never really had anything bad happen to us. And so I think there's kind of like this idea that it can't happen here, or it won't happen here. And I mean, the way the universe is just everything is always changing, and nothing is going to be the same. And so I think this expectation that a lot of Americans have, and that's why I think we're seeing this kind of like bratty, immature reaction to the disease, like, I won't wear a mask. Like, I can't, like, that's infringing on my rights. And it's like, grow up. Care about other people. Wear a mask. But it's because they can't process this idea that America is not perfect, and that bad things can happen here too. And it's not like a personal insult. It's just, that's life. You're up, you're down, you're in, you're out. Like, it's not, life is going to happen, and it's what you do with it. It's how you react to it. And, if you're reacting to it by, hiding or pretending it's not happening, or getting angry or getting depressed. I mean, and believe me, I understand it's easy to get depressed right now, but I really, I mean, certainly my spiritual practice, which is like, daily meditation and pretty hardcore 3 times a week yoga, and I'm journaling, and all the stuff I'm doing is just to kind of keep on, keep so I can keep going and not get sad, and also so I can use my energy to try to make things better. And I think that is what more people need to do. People need to get out of this like self-pitying victimhood baloney, and just, buck up, man up, be part of the solution, not the problem. So that's, I hope.
It's like some people that go to prison still find they have a full life even though they're in jail. So the heaven is within themselves. The hell is within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I just decided, this is what is, and I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm going to make the best of it, make lemonades out of all those lemons we're handed. My husband is the master of this. My husband just turned 80 years old on July 9th, and
wow.
I'm so fortunate to have this incredible person as my partner, my eternity partner. I think it's more than this life. It's like, this is my twin flame soulmate. And and I said, well, how do you do this? Because I do have stress. I'm an empath, and I feel everybody's pain, and I have to come back and say, just be me. You don't have to be the universe and feel the pain. And he says, well, I'm just totally like Ram Dass. I'm in the now. He said, I think I figured out how you can live forever. And I go, what's that? He goes, you're just always in the now. And that was, and I got, he said so little, but it said so much, like, oh, we're in this artificial reality. We're creating it. And if you're not worried about the future or the past and manifesting negative, stuff, and you're always in the now and the appreciation and in love, you're always in love with everybody and everything. You get to samadhi, you get to this state of unconditional love. And, I've gotten there, and I don't like some people. I don't want to hang out with, baby killers and rapists, but, I can get into this compassioning understanding of the totality of existence, and the play. This is like a play. This is a virtual reality. We've created the parameters, right? And some people get to come in and get to be the villains, and some people get to be the heroes, and some people the victims, and and it's a whole passion play that we've created. And at the end of the play, when we had plays, who would get the biggest applause? The villain that would do a really good job, right? The villains get the Academy Awards, and so if you can come to that position. Go ahead. Yes. What's your thought on that?
The Buddhists believe that, and I'm pretty I'm like a Jewish Wiccan Hindu Buddhist, but the Buddhists believe that that anybody who really kind of accepts the reality of change, and that life is, you have to be in the moment and you have to live in love. Like, even if you've done terrible things, if you really follow the the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, you can overcome your terrible karma from all those terrible things you did. So I mean, I think that I think there's hope for everybody. So I think that and that's the beautiful thing about like what Jayotal does, doing these kirtans at San Quentin and bringing light to these people who live in a really, dark, horrible place, and showing them the way out of their misery. And I think that for those of us who are fortunate enough to understand that with meditation and other practices, you can really improve your life and become a more realized person, that then you really you are kind of in some way working out your karma, which is what both the Hindus and the Buddhists would espouse, and I agree with. So I think it is, there are terrible people and they do terrible things. But if they commit to fixing their karma, like maybe there's even hope for Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. Maybe. I mean,
maybe.
Unlikely, but maybe.
Imagine that. Well, I was just envisioning Jayotal doing kirtan at San Quentin with everybody, singing. The kirtan is where, from what I experienced, is that he sings a line and then we sing it back, and then he changes, the tone of the octave, and you sing it back, and you get into this high spiritual meditative state by this back and forth singing, and it really does feel like you're becoming conscious and enlightened and evolving and working through some crap. So I was just like, why don't we do that all the time? Go to these prisons, go to these places, and just start singing kirtan. That was just an incredible image. You just gave me a gift. It's like, wow. That's what he's doing.
Well, yeah, that's what he's doing. Apparently, on death row in San Quentin, which is really like, if you're on death row in San Quentin, you know where the end is. And apparently his CDs are like the most requested by the death row inmates. So I think, those people who've done some terrible thing that has landed them on death row in San Quentin, they are really, touched by, Jai singing the names of God. And I mean, like I was saying earlier, he really is a saint. And when you hear his music, he's also an incredible, incredible musician, and he's been, studying music and practicing music since the 60s. So he really, his tone and his understanding of music, it is really transformative. And I feel like these men who, you know, whatever terrible thing they've done, I feel like they feel his love. He is like a true bhakta, and they feel his love through his music, and it's very healing for them listening to his music on death row.
Yeah, and when I moved to this property, my husband's Jewish, but he identified with Tantra and yogic practices. And when I moved here, we had one of those CD players that played, held like 200-300 CDs, and I would just put it on random, and I didn't watch any television, and I was so happy. It's like, but then the machine broke, and it's like, oh, okay. And I never reestablished the system, but because this was like a tantric temple, that when I moved here, all this music was like Jai Uttal. That's how I got exposed to Jai. But there's all these incredible musicians that are kind of in the same realm, right? And so since they had a healing retreat center here, Sasha and his ex-wife Joan had this incredible collection, which I just sat here and I was blissed out for the first 10 years until that machine broke. So I'm going to do that again, because I think if you come and you're always listening to the names of God, not like it's a religion that you have to do the dogma, but it's like a spiritual practice. I think that we can empower ourselves to evolve and change this planet from this extreme negativity. And, you know, it's always the darkest before the dawn, and every closed system gets so perverse that we need the outside intervention, the perturbation, and that kind of destroys the system. Then we up level to a higher level, which is, you know, that's one way to evolve. Maybe not the only way, but I was hoping we could have a gradual rebirth into something nice and beautiful, but we don't have to go through Apocalypso. My girlfriend wrote a song, Apocalypso. We don't have to go into that. We can start listening to Jai Uttal and other people like Jai, and get away from the music, which is kind of negative and angry. There's a lot of angry music out there. So what do you do with the angry music?
Yeah, my husband runs an online education program for one of the big electronic music production schools here in Los Angeles, and he does like a weekly. They have the online students, and then they also have the offline students who are also now online, but they're doing more like Zoom classes versus my husband's classes, which are more video and then personal kind of office hours with the teacher base. And and he has a little kind of, it's like a grad seminar that he does with some of the more experimental students, and so they have like a weekly meeting where they talk about whatever random stuff. And one of the things that he's been talking with his like grad seminar students lately has been that in times of crisis and change, that is when music shifts. And that is when you see a change in music away from whatever had been to whatever, you know, new kind of thing. And I think, I mean, as somebody who works with a lot of spiritual musicians and loves that kind of music, I'm definitely finding that people are more open to it than they were. I mean, I've been working with Jai a lot this year, and I feel like I'm getting much more coverage for him this year than I was when he put out his last full-length album, which was an amazing record in 2017. And this year, the music he's doing is, you know, he had a ambient record, which was really unbelievably gorgeous, like great for meditating to. And then he has this new single, Behind the Walls, about the coronavirus crisis at San Quentin. And people are really into him much more than ever before. And I think it's because the music he is making really speaks to them and really, really does like bring them into this space of feeling calmer, better, more connected. And you know, I mean, we can only do, each one of us can only do what we can do with our gifts, right? So Jai's gift is making this incredible music. My gift is getting my clients written about in the media or interviewed in the media and spreading things that way. Your gift is hosting the show and spreading things, through people listening to your show. And so as long as we are in the space of doing what we do for the right reasons and spreading that love that we can for the right reasons, it will reach the right people who then will spread their own love and truth for the right reasons. Hopefully. I think that I feel like that is kind of happening now, because there is this like unbelievably horrible darkness, sadness, depression, anger. And it's almost like we're so over it. Like we're so over being like angry and depressed and sad and down and broke and whatever, bad things, that I think there's this real attraction to sorting our crap out and getting on to a better place. And I think maybe the Star Trekian, what did I say? Fully automated luxury communism. It's like, coming on.
Bring it on.
Bring it on, right.
I can't wait to tell my husband. He'll laugh.
Yeah, and again, I don't know who came up with that, but it was not me. Last year I was working on the Andrew Yang for President campaign because I really felt like he was the guy who super got it and really understood, what we needed. And now, of course, universal basic income is like something that everybody is heard of and is for and what have you. And yeah, we need it.
Well, I was getting a download when Andrew Yang was on. It was like, well, it's great to have basic minimum income, but we need a basic minimum needs society. The education, the medical, everybody deserves a home. If we meet everybody's basic needs, then we're actually a level 1 civilization. We're a level 0 civilization. We're not even meeting the basic needs. And people will like to work. They like to do things. Like Jai, I'm sure he loves what he's doing. He doesn't feel like, I got to go to work today. He's like, I'm doing something. So it's more like contributionism, like what's his name from South Africa, Michael Tellinger, contributionism. Mm-hmm. What can I do that your payment is, I've contributed to the world. I've made it a better place. My journey through this realm had meaning and purpose. We're running out of time. We've got about amazing. Good job. We've been going so much. I want to focus on what would you like to cover in the last we have 7 minutes before we get bumped off. Oh, Susan, amazing journey.
I can do all my little. Oh, well, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. I guess I could go through my little Susan promo moment in the last bit here.
Let's do that. So. And then I'll do some exit music. I got my friend from Australia. I'll play hers.
So my name is, again, it's Susan Von Seggern, and all my socials are Susan Von Seggern, Susan, S-U-S-A-N, Von, V-O-N, Seggern, S-E-G-G-E-R-N. That's my website, SusanVonSeggern.com. Twitter at Susan Von Seggern, Instagram at Susan Von Seggern, Facebook, Susan Von Seggern. I have amazing clients right now. Ananta Govinda, a spiritual music artist, Cassandra Kubinski, spiritual music artist, contact mapping, great way to keep in touch with people. It's really good for sales, but it's also just good for keeping in touch. Adam Bauer, amazing spiritual musician. He's at IamAdamBauer.com. IcewindUSA.com. If you are looking for a power solution to make your grid use less, to go off grid, to supplement your solar, especially if you live in a windy, dark place like Iceland, or maybe somewhere in Hawaii that gets a lot of wind. Definitely check them out, IcewindUSA.com, JaiUtal.com. We've been talking about Jai a lot. I'm also a rep for an amazing natural products company called Melaleuca. We have lots of great natural makeup and hair products and cleaning products and soap and essential oils and what have you. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can hit me up on any of my socials, or they can email me at susan@susanvonseggern.com. I think all these links are on my page with you.
On aquarianradio.com. I have a page dedicated to Susan, aquarianradio.com. Yeah, go ahead. Back to you, Susan.
Yeah. So I do PR. I love to do spiritual stuff. I love to do green sustainability. I also do, technology and real estate and other things. So if you need PR, look me up. And, if you are into, if you think that you have a talent for remembering things from the future and want to learn more about that, I recommend Eric Wargo's Time Loops. I recommend Dr. Julia Mossbridge's Premonition Code, and I recommend Dr. Rizwan Verk's The Simulation Hypothesis. And,
could you send me?
Don't doubt yourself.
Can you send me that in writing, and I'll grab the links on Amazon and put those on the page. I didn't write fast enough. There are 3 books, and I will put that on your page so people can just click and go buy them. We're promoting these people. We don't know them, but we love your work. So thank you. We're just promoting healing and the evolution of consciousness. So thank you. Wow. All right. Well, that's been a great show, and we'll have you back again sometime. Let's keep in touch. Maybe there's some ways we can work together more. I'd love to interview all the people you find. You've been sending me some good people the last few years, and I enjoy interviewing some really good people. So I want to thank everybody for coming on today. This is Janet Lessin. I was going to have my co-host, but they couldn't make it today, so they'll be back next week. And Susan, I hope you have a very good COVID time, and you get a lot done, and you're productive, and you increase your love for those in your life.
Yes.
Everybody is
so
precious.
Thank you. You too. Have a wonderful weekend, and stay safe and well and healthy. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
Okay, thank you. We'll talk to you later. Much love and blessings. Aloha. And this is Planet of Peace by Jaya Earthchild, who's living in Tasmania in Australia.
Such constellation of woman, child, and man. The leaders of our nation, are they wise as well as strong, or boys in imitation, pointing that he's God, threatening the future, endangering us all? The people of all nations are united to end all war, for we are one human family, sharing one home. Planet of peace, planet of peace.